Hello, Pittsburgh Steelers Syndicate. I am Joe Rockey here, and today we are going to discuss who the Pittsburgh Steelers on the roster will be competing with a potentially high draft pick at their spot. Today's episode is strictly going to be about the player who's on the roster now and not necessarily the actual draft pick coming in. Today we are going to be covering interior defensive line and seeing if it's a spot that the Steelers should truly consider at 17, 32, or 50. So we all know that Cam Heyward is the soul of the Steelers. He is the ultimate leader, quite frankly has been for a number of years, even when Ben was still here. He is the man. However, everything that's great does eventually come to the end. That is not going to be in 2023, however. So when we look at the Steelers, the way that they craft their defensive line, essentially they only use two on most plays. It's Cam and whoever's next to Cam. And since Tuitt has retired, we truly have not filled that gap. Because when we think of what Tuitt was a pressure machine. He was disrupting passing plays. He was creating havoc in the backfield. And what the Steelers have on their roster right now is Ogunjobi and Leal. Those are the two front runners to become the starters. And the reason I am including Leal in the second spot for that is because Leal is the one who got the starts when Ogunjobi got hurt. That's the coaches telling you, well, this is the next man up. So that's where I'm starting there. So looking at these two players, starting with Leal. Leal obviously was a rookie year last year. To get two starts is a big deal. However, he had absolutely zero pressures. And for being drafted as a defensive lineman who was going to be an attacking defensive lineman, to get zero pressures in 11 games played is startling. But it does speak to a larger problem of drafting internal defensive linemen. And in virtually all these episodes, I've brought up a larger problem of drafting these players. And it's not to be said as a discouragement to drafting a position. It's to put context to it. Because as a simple fact, defensive linemen tend to get better as they cross the age threshold of 25. You put so much more muscle on your body, and you also learn what the league is doing to stop you. It's a massive advantage being older. However, using the Matt Williamson human beings theory, the average run-of-the-mill person does not have the body type that is capable of being an interior defensive lineman. So you kind of have to draft them and deal with the growing pains. That's just a fact of the position. So where the question is Leal, who was drafted in the third round last year, didn't get any pressures. The question becomes, why? Did we not get the pressures because Highsmith and Watt were sacking everything so quickly, he just never was going to get there? On this team, that's a real possibility. Was he not getting the pressures because he couldn't get through the line? Well, that's a much different discussion, and that's a problem. Or was he not getting the pressures because he didn't know, he wasn't physically capable? See, there's a difference between not having the moves, the pass rushing moves, and not being physically strong yet. The strength will come. But if you don't have the moves, it's hard to develop them at this level. It just is. And when I look at Leal, he was already out of the mold of what they were typically having. He was not built at all like Tuitt. So the question is what are we going to do with him and what should we expect from Leal? And I look at this as saying, couldn't really get on the field consistently despite the fact that we rotate defensive linemen like crazy, only appeared in 11 games, only ended up with 14 tackles, and had 0 pressures. It's not exactly a resume that's coming up and saying, there's no way we can take this guy off the field. It actually seems like, I'm not sure we should be putting this guy on the field. Again, he's a rookie, he's young, and he has all the capability of developing it. Again, right now, in time as we record this, he's not even 23 years old yet. And you put up a lot of poundage, a lot of strength in that first year to second year in the NFL. So I am not saying that Leal is done, cooked, wasted draft pick, or anything like that. But I'm also saying he's not a sure dunk that he wasn't. So it's something that we'll need to consider moving forward. And what the Steelers did this offseason was they brought back Ogunjobi, saying that, you know what? The guy was slated to be the starter, started in 16 games last year. Let's just keep him and let him go. Well, the problem is Ogunjobi is nothing like Tuitt either. Ogunjobi, 16 games played, 11 pressures. And that is a testament to saying you're here to stop the run, but we live in a league where it's necessary to stop the pass way more, especially the way that the current Steelers are built in 23 opposed to 22. You know, he was brought in 2022 to essentially protect Bush. That didn't work. I mean, Bush imploded. And it didn't matter who was in front of him. So we fixed that problem this year by getting not just one, but 2 capable inside linebackers that can get off of blocks. The need for the absorbent Casey Hampton, which essentially is what Ogunjobi was called in to do last year, isn't called for in 2023. What's called for is more pressure. This defense is elite when it is making pressure. If not, we have problems. So Ogunjobi also is not a guy who's coming in saying, I'm the pressure solution. I'm the guy who's going to fix this. And that is why I am talking interior defensive linemen and bringing this up as a possibility for any of the first 3 picks, 17, 32, or 50. Because you never can have enough quality interior linemen. And neither one of them has put their foot in the ground and said, I am the guy next to Cam. No questions asked. It's me. That's an opening. And taking a draft pick who could slide in that opening and become a truly great penetrating interior defensive lineman is a completely valid use of a pick. Now, if they don't go this direction, is the world over? No, of course not. But if you can get another quality pass rusher coming up the middle that will get consistent playing time, it's hard not to look at that. It's very hard not to look at that. And the second spot that I'm going to talk on and tee up on this episode, because it's too short to give a full episode to, is in the same light, edge rusher should be on the table. Because we know that TJ takes himself off the field regularly. We also know that the team needs an elite edge pass rusher opposite of Highsmith. Or heaven forbid if Highsmith would go down as well. I leave it open, even if it's 17, to get the second coming of TJ. If you have 3 of them, you basically are what the Pens were whenever we had Stahl. 3 monsters that no team can adequately block for. It also opens up the possibility of roaming them. And I love the idea of penetration, pass rushing penetration, coming from one of these 3 spots. Watching the Steelers and knowing the Steelers that I have, I believe it is much more likely to come from interior defensive line than being an edge rusher. But I also want to throw it out there. I do not think it's a bad idea. I just don't think it's an idea that they're going to do. Because, again, Tomlin has seen what happens when they lose a stud. He remembers the Duck year and has said we're never not having a quality backup. Likewise, he knows what happened last year when Watt went out. And it's something that, knowing Tomlin, seeing what he has done over a very long track record, I don't want to discount that outside linebacker is a spot we'd look at, nor do I want to say it's the surefire answer anyway. It's probably most likely your third or fourth round pick, but it is something that I definitely think that the eye should be kept upon because Tomlin hates being exposed. And if TJ or Highsmith, and it is an or because both of them are elite, aren't out there, the possibility of being exposed changes. And this defense becomes a completely different animal. Because without the pass rush, and really regardless of where it is, if there is not a sufficient enough pass rush, Minkah is nowhere near as effective as he could be. And this is why I say one of those first three picks, 17, 32, or 50, is going to be a penetrating pass rusher. And I cannot wait to see it. You put the fear in Burrow is how you beat Burrow. That requires contact, sacks, and above all, pressure. Give me someone who's going to do that. Recognize that the Bengals are the bully. The Bengals are the division right now. And the Ravens are taking themselves out of the game. Pass rushing, pass rushing, pass rushing, and hit Burrow.